So really the trajectory of my career to be able to win 2 Grammys as a producer and engineer, that was completely made possible by me getting a free internship at a small studio in New York when I was in my early 20s. If it wasn't for that, I definitely would not be doing the things I'm doing now. So that was really a stepping stone that gradually let me learn, have a place to learn, and have a place that I could bring people to record and actually build clientele and build my work. And it sort of just snowballed first in that one studio and then beyond that studio to other places. The good news about a studio internship is that it's a great meeting point for everyone in the music industry. So passing through the studio, you're going to see producers, engineers, artists, managers, label people, people on the business side, people in media companies. There's a lot of people kind of rubbing elbows in studios, and if you're in that environment, you can connect a lot of a network, and you can connect opportunity. As you probably know, a lot of studio internships do not pay in cash, but they pay in other ways. They pay in the education you'll get from being in that environment. They pay in the music network, and they can pay you in getting studio time for free. So when I first got an internship, I could see that the ultimate goal of me being there was really to get studio time, because I wanted to record myself drumming, I wanted to produce tracks, I wanted to work with my friends and record the musicians that I was playing gigs with as a drummer. So that was kind of like the short-term goal. And it took me probably a little less than a year to reach that point where I built up enough trust with the owner that A, he got to know me and know that I was a good person, and B, that he could trust I knew what I was doing enough in the space that I wasn't going to break anything, and he could trust me if he had to, not be there that day, that I could manage the space and do the right thing. And really, it was the access to that studio time that allowed me to build a whole career off of that. Because really, the only way to get good at this craft is just to do it, to be in the studio, to record a lot, to get a lot of reps. So in the beginning, you just want to be in the studio as much, record as much as you can, have a lot of different experiences recording different instruments, working with different people, and you do that for free until you're good enough at it where someone will ask you what your rate is, and then that's when you are able to get hired. A lot of internships start you off unpaid, and then they have a system in place that can allow you to get to paid work through the studio. So basically, when you first arrive at the studio, you're probably not going to know how the studio is organized, how to work all the gear, which mics they have, knowing how to use all the software that they're going to be using in sessions. So once you get a grasp of that, then the studio can start hiring you to assist other people who are doing sessions in the studio. So a lot of studios call this babysitting a session, where you work for the studio, and once you know the space well enough and you can troubleshoot, then the studio will hire you on an hourly rate to babysit a session and basically troubleshoot any issues that might come up. So you have to know how to solve those issues in a timely manner to be able to do that gig. The most important part about being an intern is actually just being cool, being mellow, being easy to be around, and not being too obtrusive in situations where you're, as an intern, really just meant to be an observer. So in the studio world, we refer to this as studio etiquette. And what that means is you can be in the room where there's a professional session happening, which means people are paying to be there, and everyone in the room has a goal of recording a specific song or accomplishing a certain musical task. If you're able to observe a session as an intern, which you're not always allowed to, but when you do, you want to just be a fly on the wall and in no way obstruct the workflow. Your energy in that session just needs to be really easy and kind of transparent. For example, if you're observing a session, if you're watching a great engineer or a great producer work, you're probably going to have all sorts of questions about plugins they're using or how they did something, and you would never want to interrupt the session and ask the engineer how they did something, like while they're doing it or while they're interacting with the client. That would be bad studio etiquette. You want to remain cool, and then later, maybe when the session is over and you have a moment, then you can ask your question. So it's kind of being able to read the room in those situations. That's kind of what good studio etiquette is. Studio etiquette also comes in the form of an awareness of how to be professional with interactions with different people in the studio, particularly with clients who are paying to be there. You know, the music industry is like deceptively casual. So a lot of folks in music show up to sessions kind of dressed like I'm dressed right now, shorts and t-shirt, very easy dress code. People are swearing, people might be drinking or smoking weed. So you might perceive that as being super casual and just kind of like a hang. And then I've seen a lot of interns become too relaxed and too comfortable where they think like, oh, we're just kind of hanging out and sort of anything goes. And I'm on this team too, and I can kind of contribute my ideas. But that's not really the case. It might seem very casual, but there's going to be a lot of focus and a lot of work getting done within that. And it might look very different than like a corporate office because we're not having like meetings and talking to the boss all day. But people, you know, have a different workflow in the music industry, and you kind of have to be aware of that and adapt to that and go with the flow with that. As an intern, you really want to just let the session happen and let the people work. You're not there as a creative entity. You're there to basically do what someone asks you to do. I made the mistake early on as an intern where I was observing a session and it was music I really liked and it was similar to the music that I made. So I remember kind of chiming in during a writing session and saying like how I thought the bass line should go. And the engineer actually asked me to step outside the room, and he was basically like, never ever do that. You know, you're not here with this team to make music. You weren't brought in with this crew. You're here on behalf of the studio to observe and to learn the ropes. So that was like overstepping my bounds. Best case scenario, people just humor you. Worst case scenario, you can actually be fired. A lot of studios just fire people straight out when they just kind of don't understand the work etiquette of a studio session. And never underestimate how much you can learn by just watching a session, by watching a great producer or a great engineer or a great artist work in the room. I've engineered some incredible sessions, and I've seen interns who are just kind of poking at their phone the entire session and not really checked in. And that's not really a good look, because that shows a disengagement. To really be good at this craft and this profession, you need to be fully engaged and fully listening. So as an intern, you almost want to be observing the session and imagining in your head like what you would do if you were engineering or you were producing the session. It's almost like if you're watching a tennis match and you pick one player and you say to yourself, you know, where would I hit the ball if I was this one player on every shot? You're kind of forecasting what the player would do before they do it and then seeing how your ideas check out against the pro. So you can do the same thing in a session as an intern. You just want to be fully engaged. That's really how you're going to learn, and that's how you're going to really feel the magic of these workspaces. And if you're an aspiring artist, producer, engineer who wants to build their career in the music industry, I do offer private mentorship and coaching programs. If you want to talk to me about how I could help you with your career, you can book a free 30-minute consultation call from the link below. I offer a few different coaching programs which are all geared around building your skills and helping you finish a specific project that you're working on. So you can bring me your songs, and either over the course of just a couple weeks or many weeks, we can work together and I can help you polish off your songs, finish them, and kind of troubleshoot the issues you're having in recording, production, arranging, mixing, songwriting, any of those things. Check the links below to read more about my programs, and please reach out for a free consultation call and we can talk about how to get started. So if you get an internship, you kind of want to think of this as like going to graduate school. And you don't just go to class and then go home. In school, you go to class, you absorb the information, and then you go study. So when you come back, you're sharper and more educated than you were the day before. That's what you should be doing as an intern. So the way this translates to the studio world is that you really want to put a lot of effort into learning the specific equipment in that room. So you want to take notes on what the gear is in the room, what the outboard gear is, and then you want to go read about the gear at home. You want to read the manuals, you want to watch videos about how to work that gear. And same thing with the microphones. You want to learn what mics the studio has, and then you want to read up on when those mics are used and their frequency curves and what type of microphone they are. And if you want to become an assistant who gets paid hourly to assist other engineers, you're going to need to know everything about that studio. A lot of studios, the assistant engineers actually know more about the studio than the engineers, because the assistants are there every day helping on different sessions with different people. They know the rooms cold. And you really got to know the software that studio is working in the most. So if the studio is recording and mixing a lot in Pro Tools and you don't know Pro Tools, then you need to shed. You need to practice and learn how to use Pro Tools on your own time so you can use it in the studio. Same thing goes for any other DAW. If it's Logic, if it's Ableton, you got to learn the tools for what's being used in that space. And let me give you a gem, right? So I'd say one of the most quintessential skills to have as an intern is to be able to record vocals really, really well, or at least really, really fast. So I got an early opportunity because I knew how to work Pro Tools, I knew how to record vocals, and in the studio next door to where I was interning, there was a big team of writers and producers who would work there almost every night. But they didn't really have an engineer, they just had one of the producers kind of working Pro Tools, and he didn't really know the software. So at one point, one of the guys asked me if I knew Pro Tools, and I did, a little bit. I knew it enough to do a vocal session, and I also knew how to dial in levels on the preamp and the compressor. That's kind of like all I knew at this time. But they invited me into a session. There was like 15 people in the room, a few label folks too, and I basically got to engineer a vocal session for one of their artists. And I was fast. I wasn't particularly great, but I got the job done quickly and efficiently, and they all thought I was amazing, and that led me to getting more paid work. And it really expanded my network at that time, and it was like a really exciting gig for me to get. So that's one of the first skills you need to learn as an intern, is how to record vocals. And the only way to know how to do it is to practice. So you got to invite in your friend who's a singer on the off hours and just record the vocals. The name of the game with internships is that you have to be really proactive. So this also kind of translates to cleaning and organizing, right? The best interns I've ever worked with showed up at the studio, they put down their backpack and immediately start cleaning without anyone asking them. And you know, there's people who can clean well and there's people who suck at cleaning. As an intern, if you can really clean a studio really, really well, the ownership and the staff is going to completely love you as an intern. That's really how you can get a leg up as an intern, is just helping the studio become more clean than it was and more organized than it was. You're going to be indispensable if you can do that. And this sort of illuminates a really essential point, is that as an intern, whatever you do, whatever you're assigned to do or asked to do, you want to do it really, really well and with a lot of attention. So if that's sweeping the floor or organizing the cable closet, then you want to do that really, really well. Because engineering, production, music making is very detail oriented. So if you're detail oriented in organizing 200 cables for the studio, then people are going to know that about you, that you're very detail oriented and that that quality matters to you. This is going to help you get work and be more respected. And you know what? A lot of studios will allow an intern to come in as often as the intern wants to. So when I was young in my 20s, I had a lot of time on my hands. I didn't have a lot else to do aside from being in the studio and, you know, doing my part-time job and playing a few gigs. So my internship was maybe only 2 days a week, but I was constantly asking the owner if I can come in more often than that. So some weeks I'd be there 5 or 6 days a week, and he loved that because it showed that I was hungry and I could help him get stuff done and help the studio just run more efficiently. You know, it's also important to note that every studio sort of has its own culture. Different studios will attract different cliques of people who make different genres of music. You want to be aware of the music that you make and where you're kind of headed in your career, and ultimately you want to find a space and a studio workplace that's compatible with the types of people you associate with and the types of music you ultimately want to be making. So good luck on your journey and be proactive.